coming up, which is why you will see campuses these days. Once upon a time, it was foreign banks as the first jobs to go for. Then it finally moved on to maybe private institutions and so on. Then it moved on to startups. And it's not very uncommon for people to see that they want to join these startups first because they feel entrepreneurial, even if they are one down, if they're CXO or so on. Now, with so many changes that is just coming about among us, one of the items that the organizers asked me to speak about was to say, how's about her talent? Now, clearly, these, talent
about the fact that government was almost in a form of policy paralysis. And therefore, one of the first and most important elements was that the country needed decisive leadership. I think Prime Minister Modi has redeemed himself well. To some people, in fact, it sounds too decisive. But for any organization to succeed, you need a leader who's willing to take bold decisions, who's willing to really be right there in the front, lead from the front. And I was just sharing with Ms. Bhattacharya. Mr. Rajan Raheja just mentioned to me that, look, if you really want to move the engine of the economy, we need to work on NPA resolution. And I was sharing with Ms. Bhattacharya that only last week we had a very, very detailed analysis on what needs to be done to solve that problem and address that challenge in a holistic manner, where Prime Minister was again leading from the front. And that's the kind of leadership that Prime Minister Modi has been able to bring to fore. He's been able to look at a root cause of what are the issues before the government, before policymakers. What is the cause of the problem? What is the cause of the situation? And after a root cause analysis, really prioritize what needs to be done to address those problems. In fact, one major element in the working of this government has been working with great degree of transparency. We've focused on all our actions to see how transparency can be brought to fore. More and more engagement with the people, more and more sharing of information with the people, so that they are empowered with data. People know what's happening. Everybody has an equal opportunity to participate in whatever is happening. And with that equal opportunity, also you are able to reduce the discretion that used to be the order of the day once upon a time. I still remember when the 204 coal blocks got cancelled. Almost overnight, I was stranded with the challenge of addressing the coal shortages. And when we came out with the new framework under which auctions would be the order of the day, and with starting from coal, but ultimately every natural resource, every national asset can now only be given out through a transparent auction process. But when we formed the final legal framework under which we would do it, I remember on a Sunday afternoon flying down from Mumbai to Delhi. I reached there in the afternoon about 4 o'clock. And then till midnight we sat in the coal ministry, poring over the entire framework, the law, the rules, to see that there should be no discretion left. So that even if the Honorable Prime Minister tells me that I need to favor maybe Pawan Goenka, I cannot do it. There should be absolutely no discretion left in the framework. And that's the kind of effort that we have done over the last 2.5, 3 years. Of course, in my own area of work, I've tried to introduce innovative financing models where that could help us implement programs to large scale, implement them effectively, more efficiently, so that results can be faster felt by the people of India. I have often repeated the story of the LED bulbs. If some of you have heard it, please pardon me for being repetitive. But I do believe that's one program that encompasses all the principles around which this government has worked. And within that, also demonstrates what potential, what game-changing potential we have in India as a large market, as a big business opportunity. In fact, before our government came in, the country was barely having a 0.2% share of the world LED market. The government had a company called Energy Efficiency Services Limited, which used to purchase these 7-watt LED bulbs for about $4.50, 310 Indian rupees. They would give a subsidy on that and then sell it to the consumers. In the year 2013-14, they had sold 600,000, 6 lakh LED bulbs in the entire year. When we looked at that program, we realized the potential that that program has to bring down carbon emissions by about 80 million tons a year. If we replace all the bulbs in the country, the incandescent old bulbs that we used to use with LED bulbs, there was a potential saving of 80 million tons of carbon dioxide. There was a saving of about $6.5 billion annually on consumers' electricity bills, and it would bring down the consumption of electricity by about 112 billion units. That's almost 10% of India's current consumption. And you will appreciate that the level of prosperity that large parts of India has, lighting is the main usage of electricity. But at the speed at which it was going, it could never have any game-changing impact. And if the project was to be based on subsidies, we could never scale it up to large levels. And we decided to do away with the subsidy. We decided to scale up the program so that we could replace 770 million old bulbs with LED bulbs by 2019. And we did hope that we'll be able to bring down prices with technological upgradation, with honesty in our procurement. The entire procurement process is most transparent through, again, your e-bidding and e-auction, to take a leaf from Vedi's statements. We improved on the financing pattern. Earlier, the government used to buy these bulbs and would pay over 5 years, saying that we want to make sure the bulb works for 5 years. And when I sat down with the industry participants, I realized that 60 rupees out of that 310 only reflected the additional cost and the risk element that the suppliers were factoring in for payment coming in 5 years. We were able to scale up that program, and I'm delighted to share with you today, as against 600,000 bulbs in the year 2013-14, that same government company, it's a government company, mind you, working in all the constraints of the government framework, is selling 600,000 LED bulbs of 9 watts now every day. 600,000 every day. It's only 2 years since we launched that program. 1st May 2015, I remember the first bulbs being sold. And the procurement price of 310 plus taxes has come down in our most recent procurement. And now we don't procure a 7-watt bulb, but a 9-watt bulb, 30% more illumination. The price is only 38 rupees, 88% reduction. But the suppliers don't have to come to any minister or any secretary. All bidding is transparent. All tenders are issued through the net. All bids are introduced in the net, transparently released. All bids are announced in the public domain, without the name of the bidder, of course. Payment is on the 30th day. You don't have to ever go to anybody for payment. 100% payment on the 30th day through the RTGS, again e-payment. And we take a bank guarantee for ensuring the quality of the product. The quality checks are most strict. In fact, Secretary Muniz, the erstwhile Secretary of Energy in the United States, went all over the world showing the Indian specs and this Indian program as being the most robust energy efficient program anywhere in the country. And today, India's share is nearly 16% of the total LED sales in the world, from 0.2 to 16%. And this one government company, and maybe Outlook Business could do a case study on that, in terms of its ramp up of operations, has sold 210 million bulbs in the last 22 months. 210 million bulbs. The private sector, of course, has also benefited. So if you open television, I think you see more Cisca LED ads than any other ad. In fact, I was very surprised. There's nobody from my sector in your whole partnerships here. Whereas every program these days, I find there's a lot of solar suppliers and LED suppliers. The point I was trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, was this is an outcome-oriented government. Every action has to have a defined outcome. Every action has to be closely monitored. And I'll share with you the way we've groomed ourselves, or the way we also learn from the experiences of how you can buy the LED bulb. And that's the thinking which has helped us to introduce probably business management practices in government, implement our projects to scale, work with the state governments and other stakeholders in partnership. All of this could not have been possible unless I got all the stakeholders on board. After all, I can only sell this through the states and the discoms. I can only bring down prices by talking to the suppliers of these bulbs. So it's been a complete partnership of all stakeholders, truly reflecting the spirit of cooperative federalism, which has helped us do these kind of game-changing and transformational initiatives. Along the line, time-bound execution has been a credo of this government, that whatever we take up to do in a certain time frame, we focus on getting it done. I'll share another very recent example. On the 17th, we were doing this meeting about which I just mentioned. At the end of the meeting, over a cup of tea, I just mentioned that we need to have a similar focus on electric vehicles. This happened on the 17th. We wound up at about 2:15. So 2:15 in the afternoon. I just happened to mention that we need to have a similar approach on what we will do on the electric vehicles. And I'm sorry, Vedi, I'm picking up from where you left. The E has become the focus of my talk, though it was not what I had planned. But I said we must look at electric vehicles also more holistically and move it out of the framework where today, when I go to buy a hybrid car, I get an 80,000 rupee subsidy, or I buy an electric car, maybe 1.5 lakh or whatever. That is only a constraint to the success of this project. We can't scale it up, then we know we have 1,000 crores, so many cars is the maximum we can do. So I just said, we need to have a brainstorming to address this issue. You won't believe it, ladies and gentlemen, 17th evening, my office had a notice from the Prime Minister's office that on 23rd of this month, you have to make a presentation before the Honorable Finance Minister and 3 other ministers to discuss about electric vehicles. That is responsive government. That is a government which is willing to take on aggressive targets, take on game-changing, innovative new projects, take on projects which have a dimension which goes far beyond a current benefit or a political benefit. After all, these electric vehicles is not going to give me any political dividend in the elections going on, or even in the 19 election for that matter. But it will be a game-changing program for India in terms of our reliance on imports for oil and petroleum products, in terms of leading the world in our fight against climate change as a responsible global citizen, in terms of, in the long run, bringing down costs of transportation, because I'm personally convinced electric vehicles are going to bring down significantly the cost of transportation. I don't know if Tata's will be very happy about that unless Tata's is also willing to evolve into electric vehicles, Mr. Uppal. But the bigger idea is that this country is full of opportunities, full of new ideas that the youth of India have, that younger people are brimming with. The question is, are we willing to think out of the box? Are we willing to look at government just like we would look at any other business enterprise? Are we determined to make a difference to the lives of our people? Are we willing to reinvent the way things have been done for maybe 7 decades of independence? Are we willing to redesign our lifestyles around a more responsive citizenship or a more responsive citizenry? Are we willing to reform the way governments work, the way businesses work? And demonetization in some sense was one step towards that reform we are looking for in this country, moving the informal economy into the formal economy, bringing down tax evasion, which instead of becoming a norm should become an exception, and making more and more people responsive towards paying their taxes honestly. And are we willing to restore India to that old glory, which many of our older generation people often talk about, that sone ki chidiya that India was once upon a time, and that we, each one of us in this room, desires to see India as. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. With your permission, sir, I'd like to take a few questions from our distinguished audience. Ladies and gentlemen, we have mics floating around in the room. If anyone has a question, would request you to please. All right.
You're loud enough without a mic.
So we are really substituting one slightly convenient but polluting, what you call, form of power to a much more costly generation of electricity. Now, unless we really go nuclear in a very big way, we are not going to be able to really afford that kind of sustenance.
Gentlemen, you'll be amazed at what I'm going to tell you. NTPC is the country's largest power producer. It produces about 25% power that we consume. The average cost of that power that NTPC produces is under 3 rupees per unit. Under 3 rupees. If you look at the entire power sector as a whole, the cost of generation, including the private sector and all forms of energy, would not exceed 4 rupees for the country as a whole. So at any price point, that will always be more economical than importing petroleum products on the one hand. But now the good news, ladies and gentlemen. Again, this was a short address. I can keep talking till the evening, till your entertainment program with anecdotes and examples. But solar power, it's a clean form of energy. It provides energy security to India. Nobody will take away the sun from us. Nuclear, somebody could deny us uranium supplies at a critical point of time. You remember the Chinese war, what had happened? We didn't get arms at the right point of time when we needed them. And I believe security, domestic self-reliance and our own security is very important in any program that we make. So we focused on solar energy. Erstwhile program on National Solar Mission was that by 2022, India will have 20,000 megawatts of solar. We have restated that program to make it 100,000 megawatt, 100 gigawatt of solar by 2022. And lo and behold, earlier, all of solar was purchased through a negotiated contract, government and private sector, with a regulator setting the tariffs on a feed-in tariff basis. We did away with that. From day one, I've insisted we'll do transparent bidding and we'll do an auction process. People can bid and improve their prices and participate in that. I'm delighted to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, solar power, which until 4 or 5 years ago was probably 12 rupees a unit. When I became minister was between 7 and 8 rupees a unit. The last bid, in which Mahindra also has won 250 megawatt, for 750 megawatt in Madhya Pradesh, which, ladies and gentlemen, is not the best state for solar. The irradiation there is relatively less than Gujarat or other parts of India. In Madhya Pradesh, we've determined a first-year tariff of 2 rupees 97 paisa.
Wow.
Only a 5 paisa increase for a year for 15 years, which still gives us a levelized tariff of 3 rupees 30 paisa. So you are providing energy security for India for the next 25 years out of that power that they'll generate at 3 rupees 30 paisa levelized tariff. Now, we've done a math, which I'm going to present on the 23rd to the finance minister. I know the figures because only yesterday I was screaming and ranting at my team at the numbers and the presentation. But if you only put solar power on 0.5% of Rajasthan's total landmass, Rajasthan is about 3.2 square kilometers. Only about 5% of Rajasthan's landmass you put solar power. And you know Rajasthan has huge deserts. Probably Barmer alone could provide the entire area. You can power every vehicle other than trucks. I'm not including trucks in this. Buses, four-wheelers, three-wheelers, light commercial vehicles. Every vehicle as in 2030, not today. So I'm adding all the new vehicles that will come in over the next 13 years. At 2030, whatever is the total vehicular traffic can be powered through electric batteries by putting solar plants in 0.5% of Rajasthan. That's the game-changing potential India has. We are blessed by God. We have to really exploit. Exploit is not the right word. We have to be concerned and act on it. That's about all. And that's the huge potential that India has. I like it.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time only for one more question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I go for the question? Yeah. Hello, Minister PhD. This side, right here on the left-hand side. Yeah. Yeah. First of all, thanks for the great insights on the LED bulb story. I mean, I come from Kerala, which is and I come from a small village there, and I can share with you that my house in the village has LED bulbs. The only feedback I can give you at this point of time is if we can improve the availability there. I mean, we don't get it off the shelf. I mean, it would be good if we can get it off the shelf. Thank you very much for that initiative. Yeah. Now, my question, although you're not the industry minister, but I think it's a relevant question to ask you because industry and power are closely related. So, my question is on ease of doing business in India. I think we have excellent in terms of GDP growth. I think all the numbers are speaking for India, and going forward, we will do very well. But I think when you compare ourselves with, say, Dubai or other countries in and around India, ease of doing business is let's say not the in a best situation. I don't know where we are in terms of ranking, but I think we will not be at the top 5 at least. So any comments on that, Minister? Thank you.
Sure. I think we should not bother only about ranking. It's the sense and feel that each one of us in this room has, which is important. And very clearly, I share your sentiments that it's not easy to do business in India. There are more than enough roadblocks that come in, more than enough impediments. And that's an area which we have been taking effort to try and improve. We've been working with the state governments. At the own central government level, we have been trying to debureaucratize. I'll share a small example. When I became minister in the initial few weeks, and I think I mentioned it to Mr. Raghav Bahl also when he met me, I used to get about 100 files every single day at an average, 100 files. And at that time, I had only 3 ministries. The 4th came only last year. I'm talking of 2014. And then we started this process of checking why should a file come to me at all. So every file that came, they had to justify that it has to come up to me. You'll be amazed what that resulted in. Today I get 4 or 5 files at a day at an average, max 4 or 5 files. So I don't have those big brown boxes. If any of you have seen ministers floating around with brown boxes of files, I never have that. And what did we do? Nothing. We just delegated the powers which are in our power to delegate. Why should everything come up to me? And that's been the credo. What we did is, in 3 years now, in May I'll finish 3 years. In 3 years, I have not signed a single file relating to an individual case. Not one. Everybody, and there you can imagine coal, power, mines, they are the most messy, possibly, industries to be looking after. Every day there would be complaints and problems, and everybody came with their requests. Everything goes in for a root cause analysis. Everything is studied so that if you are right, then the policy is amended. If the policy is right, you are informed, sorry sir, you don't fit into the policy, but the policy is robust and sustainable. And therefore, advantage I got was, that instead of solving each one's problem, when I'm sorting out the policy or the procedure, I'm able to probably solve 50 other people who never approached me, about whom I never came to know. So every action is dealt with in terms of its ability to influence the entire country. And every action is put on the website. In fact, there was a time when the transmission companies came and met me with a whole list of suggestions. And at the end of the third slide, because all three of those issues we had already resolved, put into the tariff policy, was on the website, I actually wound up the meeting. I said, sorry guys, you're not prepared, because the three issues you flagged off are all three already resolved in the tariff policy. Please prepare yourself and take another time and come. So I think this is a new way we have been trying to do, but I would urge each of the captains of industry here to please tell us, and it need not be my department, it could be any department. And that's another difference. In our government, we don't work in silos. It's not as if there's a banking issue, it's Mr. Jetli's problem and not my problem. Or if it's a power issue, it's not Dharmendra Pradhan's problem, it's only my problem. We work as a team. There are no silos, there are no compartments in the working of this government. So any department, any part of the government, if you have any suggestions. I mean, the other day somebody gave me a suggestion, Ved Prakash ji is here, about the time it takes to register, what is that? I was told 3 years to register a foreign investor wanting to invest in India, or a foreign mutual fund. So I've asked him to give me a note, which I'll then flag off with the Capital Markets Division. And now you have a new SEBI chairman coming in. So all of it is possible. We need a little more responsive industry also through its associations, helping us navigate this process, helping us, guiding us how it could be done better. Are there any best practices elsewhere which we can emulate? Are there any innovative practices that you can guide us with? So I would urge all of you to be more participative with this government, and we are always willing and happy to be a part of this discussion, this engagement with the people at large, with captains of industry, with trade, business, with media, which certainly helps us do our own job better. Thank you very much.
So with your permission, we'll take one last question from Mr. Nilesh Shah of Kota.
Hi, Piyush.
To your left.
For accelerated growth, you require credit.
Nilesh, you're too soft-spoken, little louder or on
Sure.
the mic.
For credit, you require credit growth.